when you have that sort of darkest time in your life, it's the catalyst for transformation. It's sort of like the phoenix rising from the ashes. So yeah, we can have these hard times and they shape us, they make us stronger. It's like pressure creates diamond, right?
Should we do it pounds? Makes us stronger. Hey, Gon Andrew, thanks for coming along today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so I just wanted to start with a grip strength tester. So we've got a hand dexter. So basically, it's a hand dynamometer, measures how tight you can squeeze. And we were talking about it a little bit earlier, just in regards to it being a marker of longevity. Generally, the greater your grip strength has a correlation with life expectancy. So keeping your grip strength and your functional strength high is correlated with a lot of things that happen in the background that they believe, and statistics show that increase longevity generally. Obviously, there's other factors that can come in and cut things short, buses, etc. So, yeah, if you'd like to give it a whack, it's a lot of like the arm wrestlers and stuff like that.
The old grip strength, all right. I've got a bit of a technique with this one, so let's see how we go. Oh, it's not a bad one.
Pooh, 64. I think might leave it at that. Call it a day, Joe. Geez, okay, 55. So
cool.
55 kilograms. So yeah, as we were saying, so you're probably going to live a lot longer than I am, Andrew. So
yeah, well, I don't know about that, but it's interesting, these indicators. So what's something one could do to extend their longevity? Are there any sort of exercises that they can focus on?
There's hundreds of things, but in regards to grip strength, there would be like dead hangs and so dead hangs, for example, you can hang for 30 seconds a day from a bar, and then as you know, if once that becomes easy and you can hit that easily, you can then do a weighted dead hang or a long increase the duration, hang for a minute, 2 minutes, or 20 kilo weight vest or whatever it might be. This obviously, if your shoulders have to be quite functional to do this. For older people, it might be difficult. So there's other exercises they can do. And yeah, once you go down longevity rabbit holes, effective hydration, good diets, obviously, all these things are paramount. But just in regards to that, and squats, leg strength, quad strength is another good indicator of longevity. And you find as in seniors, when those attributes are failing, often their life does not extend significantly past that point.
Wow. Speaking of hydration, I've just started putting Celtic sea salt into my water in the morning.
Yep.
And I've been prolonging having my first coffee by 90 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
So rather than being like addicted to it from the get-go, dependent, I should say, it's apparently better to let your body naturally wake up. Try and get some sunlight in the morning. I try and look directly at the rising sun for 5 minutes, directly on the retina. Apparently it increases the production of melatonin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's probably like a deep-seated evolutionary sort of attribute, and that, yeah, I think we need to have that natural sunlight, very different to LED lights and things that you're exposed to, the full spectrum of the wavelength. And yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I think that's a good way to start the day, and having the effective hydration. The Celtic sea salt had a few ups and downs in terms of the media lately. So you have to be careful. Apparently, that there can be high levels of like metals in them, like arsenic and a few other trace elements, which can be potentially detrimental if you're using them in great quantities. So it's important to know where you're sourcing them from and what the elemental breakdown is. But definitely good. And yes, I use reverse osmosis water, which basically takes everything out.
Wow.
And then I use Element as the supplement, which is a mixture of salts. Yeah.
Interesting. Tell me more about this reverse osmosis water. How does it filter out all the pollutants, the bad stuff?
So it's a 4-stage system, the one I'm using. So basically it's got your charcoal filter, particulate filters. So they take out first the larger bits of debris, so like any rust from pipes, algae, any matter that comes, because actually Sydney water pipes and pipes anywhere in the world are generally quite filthy after they're not cleaned out, they're not accessible. Occasionally they're flushed out, and obviously they've got water flowing through them, but they still get growth, build up. Water filtration plants aren't up to the job of filtering everything. You then got fluoride and chlorine added. Chlorine's basically more to protect the pipes than it is to protect yourself, and so then these filters don't actually capture all of this. So the first 2 stages capture the larger particles, and then it moves into higher micron or smaller micron filtration until it gets to reverse osmosis. The reverse osmosis is a semi-permeable membrane that virtually is too small to let anything through other than water particles, molecules. Then once they come through, then it then goes through, you can then have optional filters which then remineralize. I don't use those. I prefer to manually do that because I know what's going in the water. On the negative side of things is you're stripping the water of everything. So if you only have reverse osmosis water, it's kind of taking more out of you than it's putting in. So, the water's coming in without salts, it's leaving you with salts. So it can be dehydrating in that respect. So then we add in, preferential minerals to counterbalance that and give you what you need.
Interesting. Yeah, I used to have a Kangen machine. I believe that's a Japanese make. And this filtration system, is this on your self-sustainable farm?
So on the farm, I have a different system because I don't have the need to remove fluoride and chlorine because we collect rainwater. So it's a different threat. So in terms of water pollutants, what can there be? There can be anything from the atmosphere that the rain collects on the way down. Roofing on the roof, we've got, clean, good roof structures, but there could be bird feces, bat feces, etc. So it's more of a viral sort of threat. So it goes through 3-stage filters, which remove all the large particulates and any of those nasties. And then it goes through a UV system. So the UV light, once the particles are gone and there's nowhere for the viruses to hide, the UV is able to nuke and kill the viruses. So then you end up with clean, pure water, and it still has some of those natural minerals.
Wow, has this technology been around for a while?
Yeah, it's not new. It's definitely becoming easier to access and more readily available, I'd say. However, once again, on commercial scales, it's probably not. It's not very cost effective. So a lot of people don't, or a lot of companies, bottled waters and stuff like that, don't go down to this nth degree because it's too expensive.
Recently, I've also been taping my mouth shut at nighttime.
Yep.
Which I feel that is getting me into a deeper sleep, and I actually have more vivid dreams when I do it.
You're right.
I actually measure it in my Whoop, and it tells me my REM is a lot longer.
Yeah.
So I'm learning all about the breath at the moment. It's truly fascinating.
Yeah, that's cool. And yeah, so it's good to see your different stages of sleep cycle, and it's interesting. I might even give that a go. I had done mouth taping in the past, but not too successfully. I think you were saying that you use a particular brand. It's
Yeah, it's important to get one that doesn't have too many harmful chemicals in it. I think there's this one by 3M. I don't recommend this one. But there's ones that are just sort of, you've got to look at the ingredients. They should say it on the back, but you want to make sure you do get a good one. Yeah, it's important.
Yeah. So I might just back up a bit. So Andrew Lewis, so tell me a little bit about yourself. So I met you through the Kaizen Path group. You're obviously a very fit guy, been working very hard at your fitness, been working in the CrossFit scene, and you're taking over actually starting the Kaizen Path group for Coogee, is that right? Bronte. And which is exciting. So I'll be keen to be there for your inaugural event. And tell us a little about yourself, Andrew. How'd you get to this point in your life?
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, you and I connected at the Kaizen Path, and I think we had a coffee and realized there was some sort of synergies around high performance, longevity. We had some interesting conversations, and yeah, I've been into the CrossFit scene. I was a CrossFit coach for a little while. I've been doing it for about 10 years, and I'm looking a little bit more at hybrid training now. So I had some challenges with burnout with CrossFit. And yeah, I've been on a bit of a personal development path for about 7, maybe 8 years now. I'm 37 now. So when I turned 30, I kind of realized I had to make some changes in my life. So I just come out of my 20s and they were pretty rough, if I'm to be honest. I had some challenges with my own issues around binge drinking, the binge drinking culture of Australia. Had some friends who actually, unfortunately, some close friends who died from drugs. They started on, I think it was marijuana, and then it sort of escalated. They started getting into harder drugs. It was quite tragic to see. So I saw firsthand the destruction, the demons these people had. They didn't have the right tools to help regulate themselves. It was from those experiences that sort of got me onto this path of wanting to improve. And, I had a bit of an addictive personality. I'm in sales. So doing the personal development, it really helped me trade my biggest flaw for my biggest asset. So, they say you can't really cure addictions, but you can replace addictions for healthier addictions. So yeah, I got into fitness, I got into meditation, did all the breath work, got into ice baths, got into coaching, did all the mentoring, did heaps of workshops. I was traveling to America doing 9-day workshops. It's been a journey.
That's awesome. And that's really cool because Luke, our very talented cameraman, we were talking about earlier how there's ways of looking at attributes which can be seen as negative. So for example, addiction could be seen as a negative attribute, as we were saying, but there's like that, whether it's genetic or whatever the predisposition is, but those people tend to have often the gambling, the drinking, the drugs. But on the flip side, as you quite rightly pointed out, you can capitalize on that because you can use that addiction to be addicted to growth, to benefits, to getting where you need to be, to hitting those goals, targets, your critical mass. So that's awesome that you managed to take something which could be seen as a crutch and make it into a strength. So kudos to you for that. What was the tipping point? What was probably like the thing that said, was there a day where it was like, enough's enough? Was it just a gradual thing? What turned that?
I think it was around about 2017, and I was working in B2B, and I actually did a transcendental meditation course in the city. I spent a couple of grand for it. And I just started to go a little bit more inward, and I started reflecting, and, I was going out every Friday. I was living for the weekend. And it was never just a couple. You start binge drinking, you'd get home 2, 3 a.m., whatever, feeling like crap the next day. And I just found myself wasting my life. So it was around about that point that I decided to do something about it. And then I noticed the improvements. I started to surround myself with better people. I had to get away from my past. That was sort of holding me back. And it wasn't easy, but I just kept moving forwards, and here I am today.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so it's cool that you mentioned, and you're definitely we are the product of our environments, right? So then I guess, was it difficult to break away from?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, seeing my friends go down those dark paths, my life wasn't easy from about 18 to about late 20s. Like my teenage years were really rough. I was hanging around the wrong people. There was a lot of violence. I grew up in the eastern suburbs. It's not what it's like today. There were sort of gangs and all this sort of stuff back then. So yeah, I mean, you could call it sort of initiation ceremonies. I feel like I was one of the lucky ones to come out of those challenging times, and it made me who I am today. So, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? So I started to use that mindset in business, and I actually had a pretty good career in technology sales. And then I got into sort of high performance, and I found some amazing mentors. I think mentors are really sort of underrated. There's that saying, when the student's ready, the teacher arrives. You might have heard this one. And with that being said, when the student's truly ready, the teacher will disappear. So you don't want to get too dependent on mentors. A lot of my mentors, they're actually good friends today. So yeah.
Cool. And what do you reckon was the hardest challenge that you faced in that period?
I think it was my friend, his name was Tom. This guy was very entrepreneurial, and he unfortunately passed away in 2015, and that was a wake-up call for everyone in our community. You know, when you can kind of see when someone has problems, you can kind of see that they're going down a bad path, and you know, he was going in these massive benders, and we're like, what's wrong? I think his demons got the better of him, which was really hard to see. So that was probably my closest best friend, or one of my best friends. Right. So yeah, I think that was probably the catalyst. You know, at the time I had a difficult relationship. I was doing my business degree. I was working full time, living out of home. That happened. So it was really sort of a challenging period in my life. But I think when you have that sort of darkest time in your life, it's the catalyst for transformation. It's sort of like the phoenix rising from the ashes. So yeah, we can have these hard times, and they shape us. They make us stronger. It's like pressure creates diamond, right?
Yeah, it's always darkest just before the sunrise.
Yeah, that's another good one. 100%.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. And yeah, that's it's I guess something positive that came out of a negative situation. So it's terrible that you know, you lost your friend. But yeah, I guess do you, has that affected your other friends within that group? Have others made positive changes as a result of that, or?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I noticed it did change people, sort of open up their eyes, and some people settled down with families. They just sort of wanted to get out of that scene. I think some others got into personal development. But I started really to look at men's mental health and the suicide rate.
Yeah.
And I've been looking at the indicators, and it's been steadily going up over the years. I believe men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than women, which is quite sad. I think there's a lot of pressures, struggles, challenges that men don't feel very sort of comfortable or open, or feel that they can be open with these sort of topics.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it's internalized, and it's almost taboo to talk about certain topics, and I think it's a shortcoming of our society, and it's something that does need to be addressed, even from a funding perspective. I think Nick put on the Kaizen Path the other day, it's like 2%, I think 2% of the funding of mental health and outreach programs and stuff go towards men, whereas the majority goes towards women, which obviously is very important also. But when the issue seems to be 4 times greater in men, I think there needs to be some sort of rebalancing, definitely from that perspective. But even groups like Kaizen Path, I think, do a great job, and like just hearing the testimony of all the guys that attend these, so there's Sunday groups that run and help just local men. It's free to come along, and they can. Well, maybe you give me a bit of a spiel on it, because you're about to launch your one in Bronte. Yep.
Yeah, correct. So that's why I became really passionate about this work, just from my own experiences. And I think in this sort of hustle culture, being vulnerable is seen as a weakness, but you can be vulnerable and strong at the same time.
Yeah.
And then that's what sort of intrigued me about the Kaizen path. Just for our viewers, Kaizen means incremental improvement or continuous improvement. It's actually a Japanese word.
Yeah.
So the boys who run it in Kellyville, they asked if I wanted to start it in Bronte, and immediately I jumped at the opportunity. It's something that I actually wanted to do for a long time. I've been on this sort of personal development journey for 8 years, and it's like, how do I use all the knowledge that I have, all the experiences, and be of service to society and be an asset, or help people in the community? That's something I was really sort of passionate about. I had a grandfather that was a politician, so I was always really big on community. And then I started attending in Kellyville, and we do the breath work, in through the diaphragm, the slow breathing. I discovered the power of breath, how to self-regulate, how to regulate your nervous system, and then combine that with a bit of exercise to increase the heart rate, and then jumping into the ice baths. It was just such a powerful combination, and I found that every time I attended on a Sunday, I would start my week off on the right foot.
Yep.
And yeah, I just basically started from there, and I'll be kicking off in Bronte in about a week's time for the first one.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's good. I think the communities need it, and these movements are starting to get some momentum, which is really good. And yeah, like you said, I think that there is strength in vulnerability, and I think like hiding from these issues and not talking about them and bottling them up, you're worse for it. So I don't think that makes you necessarily stronger or more manly. Often you probably have more outbursts because you're all bottled up and pent up and emotionally unstable and aggressive. And so by being open and having the discussion, or telling someone when there is an issue, or externalizing the feeling, I think it's actually stronger, and that that you have that, and giving people a outlet for this, such as Kaizen. And Kaizen, so is important to me because I used to work for a very large Japanese company, and that was part of their ethos and the whole Japanese culture, and they're primarily in their manufacture, where nothing is perfect. It's always getting improved. How can we make it better? How can we make it better? How can we make it better? There's not, now that we're here, done, we can rest. If we're resting, someone else is getting ahead. So that's the ethos of it. And by having said that, like, it's not about not recognizing and celebrating victories and for the progress and that these men are making, but it's always being open to the growth and learning and bettering of oneself. So I think it's a very powerful word, and it's rightly so for this movement. So it's great that you're taking that on and embracing it, and I hope more and more chapters open up and we have this greater outreach. And like for something that's a free program, I think it's going to have huge results and dividends across community, and each of those people that are helped will bring that energy, like you said, on that Monday morning after doing it the day before, having better weeks, and that trickles through your family, your relationships, your friendships, your workplace. And we help build better men by helping them do what they do best, and it just externalize that emotion. So that's really cool. So you just went to Confest, and you said there's going to be you've had a few breakthroughs, and you've got some aspirations of what you want to do next. What's on the horizon for Andrew?
Yeah, Confest was interesting. I went there last weekend for the first time, and very unique festival. There's met a lot of interesting people, surrounded by a lot of sort of entrepreneurial energy. Met some really inspiring individuals, got to speak in front of 300 people and share my sort of political views. So yeah, it really sort of deeply inspired me, and to actually start building a business in the NDIS space, the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And, I've got some first-hand experience. I was a support worker. So I want to start with doing NDIS funded personal training. I know you've got a bit of a background in personal training as well. So yeah, I'm building a business there, sort of combining a bit of mental health, and mental health is really out of control at the moment, I think, for a lot of people. As you said before, with the Kaizen Path, whatever you suppress will spill out in other areas of your life.
Yeah.
And I think we've got another friend, Coach Huey, mutual friend. He actually helps tradies in the personal development space.
Yeah. He'll probably be coming on the show in a month or so. So yeah.
Oh, great! Yeah. That'll be good to see. So yeah, just building the business. Got a lot of sort of aspirations. So working on the podcast, doing the Kaizen Brotherhood, and yeah, it's a journey, but it's all going in the right direction.
Yeah, cool.
And I was just going to share as well, attending that Confest event, it did sort of shape my worldview a little bit. Like, I don't want to go into the sort of political realm too much, but with the upcoming election, it helped me sort of arrive a little bit more at the center. So I've just been observing some interesting trends with the left and the right. What's your opinion on the whole sort of political scene at the moment?
Yeah, definitely interesting. I think one of the biggest problem is the polarity caused by social media, and that the algorithm feeds what we want to see. Because I've got my political beliefs, but I'm open to hearing anything about, I'm very open to hearing the flip side, because nothing's absolute, and sometimes your perspective is being shaped by what you've seen, but you haven't seen everything. But we were met up with a few friends I hadn't seen for a while from high school, and we're having a discussion, and I heard someone who had a friend of mine had a vastly different political opinion to myself, which is fine, and he basically gave me a rundown of how he saw the political landscape, and it was basically verbatim, like words that I'd heard on the other side, just replaced with like left for right or right for left, and it was just interesting to see that like he was just clearly being fed the same
rhetoric.
The rhetoric, but the reverse of it, and it was almost like it was really eye opening, because it was just like I could replace like that word, and it would just be my argument just on the flip side. So it was good to hear that, and it kind of sobering to see how that is the case. And often with anything in life, something happens, there's an event or whatever, there's a witness on one side, a witness on the other, and the truth is actually somewhere in the middle. But no one wants to be in the middle. No one wants to be, more open to hearing both sides. And I guess that people feed off that polarization, and Donald Trump's the devil or Donald Trump's the savior, and there's this one or the other. There isn't someone in the middle saying, well, there's good and bad attributes. That kind of seems absurd these days, which I think's the issue. So yeah, like I've definitely got my beliefs, and I think there are pros and cons. I definitely had concerns about some of the political views, and I definitely have a lot of concerns going into this Australian election, where I think there's less and less as time progresses between the political parties, like left and right, as despite the polarity, their policies aren't worlds apart. And there are, nuclear, for example, might be on one side and not the other, and there are particular policies, but as a general feel of where the movement is going, I can't help but feel there's a overwhelming collaboration to get to a certain point where, a predetermined view, and it's hard to not have that. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think even the Liberals are starting to become a bit more socially aware with sustainability, which in previous elections they weren't so much on that side compared to the Labor Party. I think it's going to be really interesting. I think Australia's come a long way since 2020. The last 5 years has really changed things. I think we're close to $1 trillion in debt.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big problem. And, the reason I brought it up is because we're talking about masculinity and all this sort of stuff, and you see the rise of influencers like Andrew Tate. And I think that's hugely problematic, because I do see a lot of the younger generations being influenced by people like Andrew Tate. I think, what is it, Gen Z?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's largely because it's like a pendulum. So we had this huge swing to the left where, you know, the like the gender debate and all these sort of issues which went to an extreme on one side, and then there's this polarizing character that comes out and it kind of swings back to the extreme on the other side, which has its own dangers, as you mentioned, and it's not good to have extremes on either side which are influencing our next generation. So yeah, that's definitely a concern.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why I agree with, you know, you don't want to see these extremes. And I think there is a bit of far right extremism on the rise in countries like Australia, the UK. So yeah, just sort of having that lens, seeing the best of both worlds. I see that as seeing the bigger picture. So yeah, I think hopefully Australia can get back on the right track. That should be interesting to see.
Yeah, and it's another interesting thing is how we're so socially susceptible to trends that trickle down from the US, and I think that's, you know, a product of what we've seen with the, you know, extreme left views which kind of formed, and now, you know, some of the extreme right, which seems to be that polarizing effect that we were talking about. But I don't think we've seen it so much on the political landscape as the US with the vastly polarized. I feel as though they're more centralized in Australia. Like, what do you think about that? Yeah, like in terms of, I guess, like obviously Trump's policies are hugely different to the Biden administration's, right? It's night and day.
Great question. And yeah, I observe the same trends with Australia being deeply influenced by America. You know, we tend to adopt a lot of America's trends from a culture perspective. You know, it usually trickles down into Australia 5 years later, something like that. However, I think, you know, with what's going on with the tariffs and America alienating its allies, who knows? Things might actually change a little bit more. This could be an opportunity for Australia to become a little bit more independent, to have a stronger sense of identity. I think the old Australia is basically gone, right? And it's up to us to create this new Australia. So I think it's actually a really good time for Australia. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. And yeah, I for one, I'm actually really excited to see where we'll go with this.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it'll be interesting. But so it looks like, from what I'm hearing, it's leaning towards probably a Labor victory with what do they call it, pairing up with the Greens at this stage, which is I think it's a little bit concerning in terms of a lot of the times, because there is no major winner. The major political parties are susceptible to the whims of the smaller ones to get over the line, which, you know, greatly influences what they do, and what they say they're going to do beforehand is vastly different, which is already the case in politics. But what do you think about the minor parties stepping up and having more control?
Look, I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm certainly seeing, you know, Teal, for example.
Yeah.
They seem to be doing quite well, securing a number of seats. Yeah, I think sustainability is really important. So I think Labor with the Greens tends to be further ahead than the Libs in that regard. But at the same time, the cost of living, inflation, homelessness is really steadily rising, which is quite concerning to see. That's when I feel that Liberal tends to be the better option in that regard, just to sort of rectify some of the problems with the economy.
Yeah.
So personally for me, I'm observing those things to be the biggest problems. Australians are doing it tough in regards to the cost of living, inflation. You know, people are struggling to pay their mortgages. So I think that's hugely problematic. When the people are suffering, that's not a good thing for a country.
Yeah. Well, what surprised me was the elections during COVID, or just after, where I expected there was obviously a bigger shift towards the teals and that, but I expected it to be much greater based on, perception and after what we went through with lockdowns, etc. So I was very surprised and almost in disbelief at the numbers that kind of came through as a result of that. What were your thoughts around that sort of landscape?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, with all the things that transpired over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, I think whatever party gets elected, I think it will actually be an opportunity to be more transparent. I think there was a bit of trust that was lacking, and I think that needs to be rectified. I mean, that's one thing that the Trump administration's probably doing quite well. They seem to be very open with everything that's going on. So maybe Australia could follow suit.
Yeah, I think transparency is pivotal, especially if you're in a position of influence and have constituents' well-being at your best heart. So if you're, there's a lot coming out from like the investigations of Doge, etc., which is showing that there's political members that are outwardly saying, we're here to stop this and help these communities and that, and in the background they're getting kickbacks and payouts and buying mansions, and so I think, and not going to jail for it. Like if you or I were to do something on that level of corruption, you would be locked up. Like there would be a lot of pushback and that. So I think definitely transparency is a great thing. What do you think about Doge in Australia? Do we need that? I think, what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I don't know how successful it's been in America. So I believe Musk proclaimed that he would be able to save the taxpayers up to $2 trillion. Mm-hmm. However, those numbers are looking more like 150 billion. But I definitely feel that politicians do get paid too much. So I think the politicians, they need to be in it for the right reasons. They need to be of service to the people, right? Where it's not really the case at this particular point in time. So I think there needs to be some changes around that.
Yeah, I think they should have the capacity to get paid more if they get the results. The problem is they don't get the results. They make the promises, they implement things, and it ends up costing the taxpayer. So there's, billions that have been spent on like solar projects and things like that have failed and not gone through to fruition, and or doing studies on something that could potentially happen and then it falls through, or a lot of half-cocked sort of plans. I think when they had this move towards sustainability, then they put all like the pink bat scheme, I think it was, and they had all the corruption. Even NDIS, we've spoken about previously how the corruption that moves through all this system. So there definitely needs to be that accountability. And so I think something Doge-like is an accountability ultimately. So some sort of accountability to say, you've said this, or you're getting, if you're getting paid 200 grand a year, but you're worth 150 million. Is there something suspicious going on? So obviously people can be enterprising, they can invest, they can make money, that's all fine. But is there something suspicious going on? Or you've just gone out of a position of being Premier of New South Wales and you've moved directly into a high paying position in mining. It's like, well, hang on a sec, why have all your policies been in favour of mine? Like if there's a direct correlation between, a conflict of interest, there should be accountability. Like these people shouldn't be getting promoted and paid more, they should be going to jail. But if they're doing the right thing and they're getting the results, then they should be paid more and they should be, held to higher esteem, is my view on that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I definitely think there needs to be more accountability, and the NDIS scheme, a lot of people were sort of taking advantage of it. I don't know, maybe a new political system might be more effective. What that looks like.
Yep.
I mean, I've got some thoughts around it. What I'm observing is we haven't had any really sort of truly inspiring leaders for quite a while. Personally, what I'm seeing, it's all much of a muchness. They seem to be on a sort of conveyor belt. So no one has really any sort of vision for what direction Australia needs to go. So definitely accountability would be key. I know I had some thoughts around maybe having a sort of council of elder politicians, maybe former prime ministers, to oversee things, to help sort of steer the ship. But yeah, there definitely needs to be some really big changes. I think that's what's most paramount at this time, and I think the Australian people are feeling that. Hang on, this system's not really working like it used to work. We're not really the lucky country anymore. So unless we make some really big changes, I feel things are going to they're going to take a turn for the worst.
Yeah, I think the game has to change, not just the players. So I think if you're a moral, decent politician that's come into the game, they're often crushed because you're dealing with your competitors who often are immoral, and they're making deals and shaking hands and making these arrangements, and they move up the ranks, and these people that are more open and honest get turfed out and don't progress further. So I think if the game changes or the accountability becomes paramount, then it'll change the landscape. So I think there has to be a systemic change to have true change, not just another party that gets in and they make a bunch of hollow promises that are coming in 5 years. They're in there for 4, and then they make another promise which is coming in 5 years, and they're in. That's what I kind of feel needs to be done to kind of make that change. But look, it's probably a bit of a pessimistic view, and there has been, as you're saying, there has the potential for change, and let's hope that let's get behind the right people to see that change come through. Huge amount of debt in Australia. Why we're there? We were in surplus not long ago.
Well, from what I understand, the debt in 2005 in Australia was around about 90 billion. So I think some bad decisions were made at the sort of policy level. How that can be rectified? Well, Australia has one of the simplest economies. It's really not complex at all. I think we need to invest more into tech. We need to be more innovative, and I think Australia is in a good position to have more unicorn companies. And you look at the economy and it's struggling at the moment, and SMBs, they're always the backbone of any economy. So I think there needs to be some funding for more innovation. That's what I'd do anyway.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of talent in Australia, and it's just harnessing that and capitalising on that. I think the mining and resource sector, we have, I think we're the second biggest LNG producer, so natural gas, and we get. I think what I hear that $76 billion is collected by Qatar from their excise, I think it is, on the gas, and we get about 1.6 on a comparable quantity. And how that translates, so I think $7 billion gives us free dental in Australia. Another $7 billion gives us free university or tertiary education. So I think that and when you look at these profits or the tax paid by these large companies, it's often 1% or sub 1%, whereas small businesses are getting taxed at 30% or greater than. So I think there has to be a shift there on the bigger players, which are going to have larger differences to really trickle down and make a difference in a society like this. And once you start to look at this and you actually hear all these like advertising campaigns from the miners and that, it's often it'll be like, you need natural gas for your cooking, blah blah blah. But they don't say we're putting trillions into the economy, because they're not, right? So
definitely, yeah. I think energy and renewables is another opportunity for Australia. We need to choose the right energy. Whereas I don't know if Dutton, what he's suggesting is the right one. There's some concerns there. Even the Greens have got some interesting policies. They're saying they will wipe all student debt. There's just so much we could be doing.
Yeah, well, I think it's a contentious topic, especially the renewables. Nuclear has concerns, question marks. I think it's also a lot of the a lot of the research and data is based on prior technologies which aren't, what they'd be building now. There's definitely issues with wind power turbines. So I think that's a mistake by going down that path. And, it's not just my thoughts. They can't be recycled. The blades are just thrown into landfill. Their life is seldom 20 years. They often use non-renewables as backup power sources, and they have maintenance problems, huge construction costs using non-renewables. And once they're so I think we have to invest and strive. So we've got a lot of sun, so solar is a potential, but often solar farms are put somewhere where the land is cheap and they're so far away, and then the infrastructure that has to go in and the cables and which potentially creates jobs, but does it create efficient, usable power? Even EVs are charged often at night when the sun's not shining and the wind's not as blowing as effectively. So we have to have the holistic picture, and ultimately, the people that suffer from a lot of these failed ventures in these respects. So I think that we've got a long way to go. Although we've come a long way in many respects, but I think we can't just follow a rhetoric that other countries have done it, therefore it's successful. It's because even a lot of these countries that have said they're going to wind back their coal have pushed and revised these targets because they're not realistic and not coming to fruition, which a lot of the time on paper says it will.
Yeah, I think Australia's got a long way in terms of meeting the Paris Treaty. And that's why I don't necessarily agree with Dutton's stance on renewables and energy. So that's one gripe that I have with the Libs in that regard. But I think it'd be interesting to see where we go with everything, and with the election, it's in a week's time or something.
Yeah, I think is it 2nd, 3rd of May, maybe, yeah.
So got to get voting, right?
Yeah. Cool. So is there anything else you wanted to cap off on? You mentioned you had some growth during COVID and some changes and some thoughts on that sort of period. Is there anything you wanted to talk about that?
Mainly, we sort of touched upon it, but it's mainly just the transparency and, there was some people experience adverse effects from the vaccines and all this sort of stuff.
Did you experience anything?
Possibly. I'm uncertain.
Yep.
I'll need to do some digging. Possibly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot are coming forward, and even statistically the all-cause mortality seems to have gone up for whatever reason during that since that time, which is definitely a concern, and there is more and more coming out about the roots of it. So like the latest investigation basically put a nail in the coffin in regards to the source was very, very likely to be from that Wuhan Institute, which was very, very likely to be funded by the same people that were responsible with handling the outbreak, right? So that's very concerning.
It's just interesting because I believe it's 100% been confirmed that it did indeed come from a lab, right?
Yeah, I don't like to use 100%, but it's as close to as you can. Yeah, so it's definitely got markers of being man-made. The research was there, they were funded, so all signs lead to that, which got you kicked off social media at one stage if you said something wild, alluded to that fact. So
yeah, I think when Australia launched that probe into that investigation into the origins of COVID into Wuhan, and China didn't take to that too lightly, that actually diplomatic relations with them actually soured quite significantly during that time. But if you observe in these regimes, I think Chernobyl is a good example when people were trying to find out. There was a bit of corruption at that high level. They didn't want people to find out. So it was just interesting during that time. Some of the information that the people were getting it came from bats. So that appears to be inconclusive. So yeah, I think you just got to keep your wits about you and just be logical with these things.
Yeah, and then I think that comes back to freedom of speech and information. So if you don't have access to both sides of the story, it's hard to I guess have that logic and that optics, especially if there's censorship, which Zuckerberg's come out recently and said they're going to move towards a community notes structure, same as X, as opposed to the what do they call it, the fact checkers, which I think is a good thing for freedom of speech, which I don't think truly exists anymore, and I think that's to our detriment. So obviously there has to be some level of policing if people can't be narcissistic and hurtful intentionally, but to have a view is I think freedom. So I think everyone can have their own view. What you do with it is the different thing.
Absolutely, and I feel fortunate that in Australia, the democracy, that we're not locking people up like in the UK, right?
Sure. Well, that's terrible. Yeah, I don't know. We might not be too far from some of the policies that I think are coming through, but
yeah, who knows? It's a big topic for sure, but maybe we can discuss it on the next one.
Yeah, that's it. All right. Well, thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Phil.
It was a
really
pleasure.
enjoyed today.
And looking, if anyone can make it down, I'm not sure if we'll have this out in time, but to Bronte, and so you'll be there every Sunday. Is that the plan?
Correct. Yeah, the plan is to start it at 7 a.m. It will run for about an hour, so it's not for profit. There's no money exchange. So come down. We'll do a bit of breath work, ice baths, fitness, a bit of personal development. So looking forward to it. And if you can find me on Instagram as well. So I'll include a link for the episode.
Yeah, awesome. So I'll put up some shorts and reels when it gets closer and help promote it, and I'll definitely come along and join it. And so a little rundown of what we do at one of these programs, just to give people some insight.
Yeah, for sure. So basically rock up. We have 3 ice baths, and yeah, just be sort of open. We start with a bit of motivational talk, bit of personal development. Then we'll get into some breath work. Then it's followed by some physical activity. And we might do something like the beep test, get the heart rate up. And then we finish with a cold plunge into the ice bath. So we usually do about 3 minutes. And we usually have a brekkie afterwards. So yeah, come down.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, mate. And hope to hear a lot more from you soon.
Appreciate it, Phil. Thank you.
Yeah.